When William James argues that relations are real, it does not mean only the relations of continuity, the felt, and that binds moments together. It also means the relations of separation, the felt, not the break, the contrast, the shift that marks one experience as distinct from another. In radical empiricism, these separating relations are just as real as the connecting ones, because they are directly experienced. James sometimes calls this side of experience disjunctive. The term points to a simple but often ignored fact. Experience is not a perfectly smooth flow. It is also patterned by cuts, exclusions, and distinctions. To understand disjunctive experience, begin again with the stream of consciousness. The stream is continuous in the sense that it flows, but it is not uniform. It has changes in direction, changes in intensity, and changes in focus. When your attention shifts from one object to another, the shift is experienced as a difference. This is now foreground, that is now background. When you reject a thought, you feel the rejection. When you notice a contrast, hot versus cold, safe versus dangerous, familiar versus unfamiliar, the contrast is not merely an abstract judgment added later. It is part of how the world shows up in experience. Disjunctive experience names these felt discontinuities. James's point is methodological. Many theories treat relations as products of thought. They assume that the mind receives isolated content and then imposes distinctions through concepts. James thinks this misdescribes what experience is like. Distinctions are often immediately felt. The difference between this and that can appear as a qualitative contrast before it appears as a verbal classification. The sense of exclusion this is not that can be present as an experiential boundary. And because it is present, empiricism must accept it as data rather than dismiss it as an intellectual add-on. Disjunctive relations appear clearly in perception. Consider figure and ground. When you look at a scene, you do not perceive a flat array of equal details. You experience a selection. An object stands out. The rest recedes. That separation is not a later theory. It is the structure of perception as lived. Or consider an illusion. The moment you see that the lines are equal or unequal, the experience flips. That flip is a disjunctive transition. It is a break in the organization of the perceptual field, and it is experienced as such. Disjunctive experience is also central to thought. When you reason, you separate possibilities. You exclude contradictions. You feel that one conclusion follows rather than another. Even when the reasoning is not verbal, there is a felt difference between this fits and this does not fit. In James's terms, much of this operates in the fringe of consciousness, where meaning is guided by vague senses of relevance and exclusion. The fringe can contain a felt wrongness that disqualifies an idea before you can articulate why. That felt disqualification is disjunctive in structure. This is where the contrast with conjunctive experience becomes useful. Conjunctive experience is the felt continuity that binds moments, transitions, connections. And disjunctive experience is the felt separation that differentiates moments, contrasts, interruptions, the not. James's claim is that both are genuine parts of experience. If you focus only on conjunctive continuity, you risk a philosophy that dissolves distinctions into vague unity. If you focus only on disjunctive separation, you risk a philosophy that treats experience as fragmented atoms. Radical empiricism tries to do justice to both. The world is connected and divided, and those features appear in experience. Psychologically, disjunctive experience is closely tied to attention. Attention is selection, and selection implies exclusion. To attend to one thing is to not attend to another. The boundaries of a moment of consciousness are often defined by what attention is currently leaving out. James treats this as a basic functional fact. Consciousness is not an all-inclusive mirror. It is an instrument of choice. Disjunctive relations are therefore not rare. They are built into the structure of mental life. This also helps explain why James thinks some metaphysical problems arise from starting with the wrong picture. If you start with isolated atoms, you must invent a glue. If you start with pure unity, you must invent differences. James says, do not invent what experience already gives. Experience gives both connection and separation. The scientific and philosophical task is to describe how these relations operate, how they shift, and what consequences they produce for meaning and action. A standard objection is that disjunctive relations might just be subjective classifications rather than real features of reality. James's response is again methodological. The experience of distinction is real. It is part of what is given. Whether a particular distinction corresponds to a stable feature of the world is a further question, one we can test and revise. But we do not get to deny the experiential fact of distinction simply because it is relational. If empiricism is our method, we begin with the fact that consciousness lives in a world of differences as well as continuities. In the end, disjunctive experience is James's way of keeping radical empiricism honest. The world of experience is not only smooth flow, it is also shaped by breaks and contrasts. Those breaks are not merely conceptual tools. They are felt relations that structure perception, thought, and action. And when you keep both conjunctive and disjunctive experience in view, the stream of consciousness becomes clearer. It is a continuous movement whose meaning depends on how it connects and how it separates, how it binds and how it distinguishes.